pages there. Lots and lots for students and teachers and parents to do, including videos, activity, worksheets, all sorts of things there. My own granddaughter's been working on that, I'm delighted to say, so I hope to welcome her into the energy sector at some point in the future, having learnt all that we've got going on STEM subjects on the Skills for Energy pages on the Eagle website. If you have any resources that you'd like to share with young people, with teachers, with parents, that can keep young people entertained and informed and educated, do let us know and let our Skills for Energy department here know about that. So just email us on skills@eager.com. Also, throughout the weeks since lockdown has started, we've been asking members and non-members really to feed into us what the key issues that they're facing at the moment, what they think of the government's actions that they've taken to date to try and help industry, and really what else you feel government could be doing to help industry. So there is a survey there. We're regularly feeding that into BEIS and also into our local enterprise partnership for the region, and also into MPs as well. So we're trying to make sure that your views are ahead both regionally, locally and nationally. So that's the idea of that. So do please take a note of that web link there and go on there and take that very short survey. It won't take you more than 10 minutes. So do please do that. Just to say also that this presentation will be sent to you afterwards. We've made available so you can click on those various different web links and email addresses. Just some housekeeping issues for you as the afternoon goes on over the next hour. I don't need to point out to you where your loos are. Hopefully you already know where they are. And obviously safety briefing, you already know where your escape exits are as well, I hope. But nonetheless, in terms of a quick user guide to using the Teams platform, as I say, if you'd be kind enough to switch off both your camera and your microphone during the course of the presentations, and utilize the chat function that's right in the middle of the control bar that you have there on the screen there, and use that to ask questions throughout. So put your questions on there, and at the end of that we'll attempt to address as many of your questions as we can for the Q&A session at the end. Any questions that we don't manage to answer during the course of the afternoon, we'll try and make sure that our guest speakers answer those subsequently, and then we can come back to you with those answers. So that's how to... Hello there.
Sorry, it's Corinne from EDS. It just says at the moment that only team members can chat and that you have to be asked to become a member to use the chat function. It's greyed out currently, just to let you know.
Okay, well, I've got my email address, so simon.gray@eager.com. So for any of those that aren't able to ask via the chat function, do please feel free to email me. So once again, that's Simon, SIMON.Gray, GRAY, @eager, that's 3 E's, gr.com. Send me your questions, and if you're not able to actually post the questions via the chat function, I'll try and put them from my email.
Simon.
Hi.
It's Chris Hudson here. Just a comment back to Corinne there. If she logs out the call and logs back in, she'll get the chat function availability to her.
Okay, thank you. I'll do so.
So there we are. Thank you. Delighted to see so many helpful people out there trying to make sure this all works well. Just to say, we've got about 130 people registered. I think we've got 90 odd plus on the call at the moment. So quite a large event. So as I say, if you can leave your questions and ask those via the chat function as opposed to coming on via the mic, and if you could turn off your cameras as well, just helps hopefully with the bandwidth. So thanks everyone, delighted to have everyone with us this afternoon, and delighted to be able to introduce you to our speakers, Catherine Jones, Stakeholder Engagement Manager of Norfolk Vanguard and Boreas, and Rob Lilly, Procurement and Supply Chain Manager at Vattenfall. And Catherine will also be introducing you to a guest speaker in a little while as well, someone else that wants to talk to you, and hopefully you'll want to talk to him. So I'll now pass over to Catherine and relinquish the screen to her. Catherine, over to you.
Right, so I'll unmute myself and just find the right thing to share with you. Hold on a second. Oh, desktop screen, here we go. Hang on a minute. I'm trying to find the right thing. What's that one? No. Should be on my desktop. Okay, Esme, maybe you want to put yours on after all. Can you do that? And I'll just say next slide. It's a bit strange that I can't find it. Ah, no, I've got it. Okay, it's okay. Right, can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Can everybody see my slide? Okay.
You can see it.
So
if you put it on presentation mode, that would be handy. So we don't. That's it. Perfect.
Okay, there is a little bit of a lag, but yeah. So hi everybody. I think I had a quick look at some of the names registered, and I think I've met quite a lot of you. And those of you who I haven't, then I hope once COVID-19 lets us all get back to normal, maybe I'll meet you in the future. And Rob Lilly, I guess everybody knows Rob. So yeah, hello on his behalf.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm lurking here as well.
Yeah. So this presentation really is intended to follow on from the workshop that we held last November as part of Offshore Wind Week. And we had an event at the Lowestoft Skills Centre that Simon mentioned as a fantastic venue. And, you know, really useful discussions were had at that. And I'm sure lots of you have had a chance to look at the report that we wrote as a result of that. And it's, you know, it is a lot of your findings and your views. And also thank you to those who over the last few days have been in to our website and filled in the feedback form. So I'll be referring to some of the feedback we've had on that over the last couple of days today as well. So you all pretty much know Vattenfall's ambition to enable all our customers in all our markets to live climate smarter lives within a generation. So I'm not going to say more about Vattenfall than that, but I'll touch on how aligned we are with UK government's ambition and talk about some project updates and how that relates to supply chain development. And then Rob and our mystery guest, another Rob, will take you through more some of the sort of short, medium and longer term activities relating to the project. And yeah, then we hope to have some time for discussions. So I'm on the next slide now. Hopefully we're all on the same sort of time frame. Lots of you have seen this map before. Just to say, Vattenfall have been in the UK for just over 10 years. In that time, we've spent about more than £3 billion in the UK, and we've got 1 gigawatt of installed renewable capacity in the UK, mainly wind, but also we have some solar, some battery projects, and interconnectors, and we're looking at heat networks and hydrogen and various other things now as well. We very much see the UK as an important part of our pipeline. Throughout Europe, we have about 2.8 gigawatts of installed wind capacity. So, you know, the UK is roughly about a third of our renewables capacity now, but it's about 60% of our development pipeline. So it's a really important market for us. And the Southern North Sea is a really, really big part of that. And you'll see in the coming slides that Vanguard and Boreas are very much at the heart of that pipeline of development. And aligned with the offshore wind sector deal, of course, you know, we all know on this call that the UK are #1 at the moment in offshore wind. And we're keen for UK companies to provide their expertise across our portfolio as well. And Some of you will know that recently a local company that has done very well and now been bought out by another company, but the Worley team, for example, have a framework contract across all our operating wind farms across Europe for O&M. So there are lots of opportunities beyond Norfolk Vanguard and Norfolk Boreas that we will maybe touch upon. So here are the projects. Just going to give you some really overarching headlines here. Norfolk Vanguard and Norfolk Boreas. So I think you can see my pointer. Norfolk Vanguard are in 2 separate blocks. There's a big shipping lane through here. That's why they're in 2 separate blocks. This is Norfolk Boreas. They've been very much developed in a coordinated manner. So they have a shared cable corridor. Offshore, it's about 80 kilometers long, and onshore about 60 kilometers long. They will power about 3.9 million homes, together 3.6 gigawatts. So these are very large projects. As I say, they've been developed through a very coordinated methodology. So one main phase of onshore duct installation, one landfall, one connection point, and offshore a shared cable corridor as well. They're very advanced, both of them, through the planning system, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the really key thing to stress really is that Vattenfall's approach, you've experienced it as supply chain, is one very much of early dialogue, early engagement, and we've adopted that approach also with our sort of EIA type stakeholders as well. And so, I'm pleased to be able to report that these are not controversial projects. We've got no HRA issues, and we're very much looking forward to the projects going ahead. So where did these projects fit with the UK offshore wind ambitions and progress? Quick sort of summary here. You probably know a lot of this already, but we've got 9 gigawatts operating, 10 gigawatts committed. So, in some of those are in construction already. 16 gigawatts under development. So these are the bracket in which Norfolk Boreas and Norfolk Vanguard and Thanet Extension sit. And altogether, these 3 are about 4 gigawatts. And so we are 25% of this currently under development category. Now, this ranges from projects with agreement for lease, but not much else yet. Some projects are already in the planning system, and some are fairly advanced. So there's no guarantees with any of these 16 gigawatts. So the gap currently between what we've got committed, about 19 gigawatts committed and operating, and the UK government's 40 gigawatt target is about 21 gigawatts. So we're a big proportion of that as well. But what's significant is at the current rate of development, typically, we're going to need to speed up a lot in the UK if we're going to achieve this 40 gigawatts by 2040 target. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, for people that can't really envisage what that actually means, those targets and those growth figures there, we've actually got some slides further on in the presentation that shows you what it means in terms of jobs, factories and people and investment. So we will get to that later on and fill out the figures a bit more.
Yeah, this is still sort of introduction really. But I think the thing to point out is these are really exciting times. Offshore wind is really the backbone, if you like, of the UK government's net zero ambition. We need this kind of base load green energy to electrify a lot of our other systems that we intend to electrify to reach net zero. And I just put in here that these sort of from round 4 onwards, really, we're going to have to take a more strategic approach to developing these projects and think about coupling sectors. So things like hydrogen generation, alternative ways of connecting into the grid, alternative ways of moving power about. So, and what's clear is that the Southern North Sea is a really attractive place to do offshore wind because of the physical characteristics of the area, but also because of people like you who are already very experienced in the offshore sector one way or another. And yeah, we've got a lot going for us here in the East Anglia cluster. So this is a sort of working model time frame for Vanguard Boreas. And we're really on kind of quite detailed project stuff now. So we've jumped from really big picture UK to small scale, looking at the projects. So overarching, I suppose what you need to know are that the pink arrows are things that are really, really relating to the project. So we're currently due to end the Norfolk Boreas examination in mid-May. Here, we're hoping for a consent decision for Vanguard on the 1st of June. And given that the timing for the NSIP, nationally significant infrastructure projects, is a statutory timeframe. It's 12 months. Any change to that timeframe requires intervention from the Secretary of State, the BEIS. So that sort of timeframe is a really important fixed point in any developer's thinking about planning, as of course is the Contracts for Difference mechanism, which is the support system for these projects. So what you'll notice here is that it's quite a short time before potentially we get consent for Vanguard and the start of the Contract for Difference bidding process. We were due to get this consent decision in December, but some extra questions were asked, mainly in relation to cumulative impacts. So this is the thing that, as you can appreciate, as business people, investor confidence depends quite a lot on the stability of the context in which they're making investments. And, you know, things like snap general elections and COVID-19 aren't helpful, of course, but, you know, we can all try and work together and work around those sorts of things. And so we feel that, you know, providing there are no further delays, and there shouldn't be from our perspective, we'll be ready for this. But what's really key, I guess, for you is that a consent decision, even just the first of the two, allows us to do more definitive conversations with you guys than we would otherwise. Up to that sort of point, everything's really at risk, and you know, but we are confident, and therefore we're doing lots of things like additional SI and things, all towards helping the discharge of planning requirements and detailed design and things. You can see lots of overlap here in the time frame. So now here's our mystery guest to tell you a bit more about this. Rob.
Afternoon, everyone. My name's Rob Anderson. I've just joined the projects as the project director, so overseeing both projects as we move forward into the CFD auction over the next phase. So first of all, pleasure to be here, and it's a real sort of privilege for me to be involved in a project of this magnitude, this significance for the UK decarbonization targets, and also a project that's going to have significant long-term benefits and relationships with the East Anglia region. So yeah, thanks everyone. My background really been focused on developing offshore wind projects both in the UK and Europe and in Taiwan. So I'm very much looking forward to being involved in this project as it moves into the next phase. I must admit, joining a company as large as Vattenfall in this current environment and having to get on top of the project, all the issues and the history, as well as meet all the relevant stakeholders, doing that from the comfort of my sitting room has been a challenge over the last month. So I'm very much looking forward to the lockdown finishing, and I hope that means I'll be up in the region pretty soon and have an opportunity to meet face to face with a lot of the key stakeholders and participants. I think my role really is stemmed out of the fact on the history of the project is that we have been running separate consenting and planning processes for quite a while, and the two projects have been considered, you know, despite the joined up thinking, it's sort of been running on separate timelines. But as we're looking towards next year's CFD auction process, it really is time to start looking at this as a single project, perhaps in different phases, and to make sure that there's joined up thinking in terms of our approach to the market, our design, and to make this project competitive, really take advantage of the significant scale that this project represents. So I think my new role is really focused on that and focused on delivery for the projects over the coming years. I think Katrin did a good overview of where we are in the project, but I think, you know, we are really coming to the end of the consenting process. There's still still a lot of work to do, and the consenting team will remind me of that. But I think we can see the light at the end of a long tunnel, and we're very encouraged by the progress we've made, the support we've made in getting the projects to this phase. And now we really are changing focus into getting ready for the auction next year and making sure that we're taking steps in that direction. I think this is, so our teams are very busy right now on the engineering and feasibility of the different configurations and how we take that forward. We are just about to start the next phase of detailed survey work, both onshore and offshore, so that we sort of get the information that's required to inform our designs and to make sure that you know, we're de-risking the project as far as possible. Getting those surveys started in this current environment is a challenge, but I feel very confident that we'll be able to start significant work over the course of the summer. And I think most importantly to this forum really is our engagement with the supply chain, and certainly we will be accelerating that in preparation. So certainly with the tier one contractors, there's the engagement has begun, and I think that that will continue over the next few months and certainly ramp up. So a very exciting time to join the project for me. I think the project is excellent, has a fantastic chance in the auction next year, and I think a lot of that has to do with the good work that's happened and the engagement of our team with everyone and the support that we've had to get us to this point. So yeah, pleasure to make your virtual acquaintance.
Okay.
I see a couple of questions popping up. I don't know whether we're going to answer those on the fly or save those to the end, but
I think the idea was for Rob to do his bit and then go over to question and answers with the three of you was the idea.
Perfect. Okay, we'll keep those in line. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. Am I up?
Yes, please, Rob.
Cool, excellent, thank you. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you, and I'd like to say thank you for so many people for joining. You know, when we first kicked this off 2 years ago at Norwich Football Club with Simon, myself, and probably a couple of dozen other people, people like Bruce and Steve and Stuart, Mandy, all coming along and sort of getting to know us and everything. I remember saying at the time, having done a few of these projects, you just can't start the supply chain engagement early enough. And boy, am I grateful that we did, looking at everything that's happening now, you know, not only with CV19, but also with the consent delay that we were handed down in December. We had our meeting in November in Lowestoft, and we talked very clearly about our engagement timelines for Norfolk, but also for Thanet Extension, which runs on exactly the same timeline. So the surveys that Rob and Catherine have just been talking about are also going to be happening down in Kent. So, you know, we've got a number of areas of engagement going forward, and we're looking at a sort of clustering approach for procurement for those projects, and that might even go across some of our European projects as well. And you know, I'm really pleased to see that our category management teams are now starting to get much more engaged with the tier ones, and hopefully you'll see that feeding down to local content very soon. I've never had so many questions from our own internal team about who is it that we talk to in Norfolk about the projects, you know, who can supply this. So again, I'm really grateful for the work that Eager have done in the past with their own supply chain data, and obviously the work that we've done over the last 2 years. So thank you all for keeping involved. And you know, there's been a lot of companies that we've been involved with over the past 2 years who haven't quite got there yet, and I think they'll probably know who I'm talking about, that we're desperate to work with them. And you know, as soon as we actually get this consenting business done, we can actually get on and finalize those. I hadn't anticipated the amount of work that we've actually needed to do since December to try and get this over the line in June. So thank you for being patient. We will get there. We're doing all that we can, and it's only by having the support that we've had from all of you guys that are on the call at the moment that's actually sort of keeping us going. So again, thank you very much. It won't be any surprise to you, those of you that have read the report already, what's in there about more engagement, more certainty, understanding the pipeline, you know, meetings with suppliers, meeting with tier ones. You know, they're all the things that we've been talking about for the last 2 years. It was nice to see that everybody agrees with us. I think there are a number of ways that government can support us and that we can support ourselves to get there. And we've also got the people like Eager and OREC, who I think are probably on the call today, with Fit for Offshore Renewables coming very soon, which are going to help to sort of power up the supply chain with the sort of green recovery that's got to come very, very soon. We will be starting more supply chain engagement events as soon as the lockdown's actually over. We're planning to do some more kind of meet the buyer events, probably through Eager, because they've got a platform that works and they can do a lot of the admin and sort of help and support us with that. So kind of keep an eye out for that coming soon. So thank you for swapping the slides, Catherine. The procurement approach hasn't changed. The only thing that I would say that's happened is it's just become a bit more difficult for us to do the level of engagement we'd have liked to have. Very much the stage that we're at now, and we'll go into much more detail on it later on, is that the early level engagement that we did over the last couple of years has fed into what we call our go-to-market strategy. So I think it was just last month we took all of our procurement strategies to the board of Vattenfall, who have signed them off, and I'll be sharing those with you soon, probably in about 10 minutes time. But it gives a lot more, you know, a lot clearer picture about when we're going to be engaging. And one of the actual targets for our event in Lowestoft in November was very much getting local suppliers the opportunity to meet with the big tier one contractors and understand, you know, when and who they had to talk to. So hopefully you've made contact with people. If not, their names will be in the report. And you can chase them down now and start saying, look, you know, I know Vattenfall are going to be talking to you now. How do we fit into that? You know, we want to be part of it. So that's very much the plan from now, is that we're very much going to start tendering, not tendering necessarily. We're going to start the engagement in a lot more detail and some tendering between now and Q3. In Q3, I'm probably going to have to draft a new supply chain plan because we're going to have to put together our bid for CFD towards the end of the year. So I'll need to have a pretty good idea about what we're doing in terms of prices, to update our business case, what we're expecting to achieve in terms of UK content, and a lot more information about what the project's actually going to look like. And that will help to feed us in our task of setting up our O&M base and O&M port locations, which is a piece of work I'm about to start probably in about a month to 6 weeks' time. Can I have the next slide, please, Catherine? It's not catching up yet, is it? Right, thank you. I showed this slide again back in November. I just think it's important to demonstrate once again where we are in terms of our progress and you know, financially how it impacts on us. Back one, please. You'll see the little hump that we have around Q2, Q3 of 2020. That's pretty much on target. I would say it's probably moved back by a quarter in terms of the delays we've got due to the consenting delays. And obviously COVID and the issues that that's actually brought with getting people on the ground. We took a decision very early on that we didn't want to expose our subcontractors to any extra risk, even though some of the subcontractors are still actually working. We said, look, you know, we don't want to actually have that, you know, as a Vattenfall thing, pushing people out to work when we don't feel they ought to. So we took the decision to just keep things sensible, and now we're starting to see a relaxation. You know, we're gonna push ahead full steam and aim to still get everything done by the end of the year. I think the one thing that we can't, or that we really hope isn't going to happen, is if we get another consent delay, because that would have a significant impact on our ability to actually be in a really good shape towards the end of year. And I've already seen the impact it's had on my ability to engage with the supply chain, and I'm quite fearful that it would impact on that and some of our contracting and strategy decisions. So let's all keep our fingers crossed for June. Next slide, please, Catherine. So the next slide, when it finally pops up, is our go-to-market timeline for each of the categories. I'm showing this to you now because we've just had it pretty much signed off by the board. But what I would say is this was actually agreed before, or in line with where we were at the time, but obviously CV19 could still impact us slightly, especially around surveys. Also, we don't know if we're going to come across anything archaeological when we're doing our surveys, and we might have to modify our timeline slightly because of that. Something else that we've got, and I'd ask you just to take this into account, we've got a lot of new team members joining the business at the moment. And previously, and if you're a member of the Vattenfall supply chain group on LinkedIn, you will have seen that I share on there the procurement structure in terms of who buys what. When I get all of the updates for the new members joining the team, I will share that again, and I will make sure that everybody is notified who to contact as their new procurement person. Okay. So the key deliverables for the Vattenfall procurement team over the next few months are very much getting the tenders into the market. I'm going to be launching all of the onshore civils and enabling works probably within the next 4 weeks' time. So that's going to have a major impact across the region in terms of companies looking to tender. And I'm also going to be launching the O&M and the port facilities. The last time we met in November, my role was very much looking after Thanet, Vanguard Boreas and Scotland. I've been asked to actually look after the O&M port procurement. So I'm going to start actually conducting a much deeper exercise with both Lowestoft and Great Yarmouth to see how we can get the optimum support that we need to deliver these projects. So that's going to be a really big piece of work for me. So I expect I'll be engaging with a lot of the people who are on the call now, looking at how we're going to jointly deliver that, because I mention it at every event that we go to. Vattenfall really are not the experts in everything. You know, we're developers, and we very much rely on the experts in the field to help us to deliver these projects. So I'll be calling you all up and making sure that you're ready to support us and to help us. Okay, can I have the next slide, please, Catherine? So while I'm talking about that, something that I've been talking to BEIS, Renewable UK and the government about is what do we actually need to achieve in terms of increases in UK content? And I've been asked to ask some very specific questions when we go out to tender. And for things like turbines, we'll be asking for every tenderer to give us a price for things like UK towers and blades, obviously. We'll be asking everybody who's working on grid or foundations to give us steel prices and secondary steel prices. We'll be looking to separate whether we can buy electrical components separately, like switchgears and transformers in the UK, rather than buying them as part of an EPC. We'll also be looking at things like cables, cable protection as something, you know, can we break that out and do it separately, or is it best to do it in an EPC? And a really big area for us, obviously, is O&M, as seen as it makes up probably 48 to 50% of the entire spend over the lifetime. What can we do to actually increase levels of O&M in the UK, and especially around innovation, and what does that mean? Because we're really aware of how CV19 has impacted on the ability to deliver O&M and for people to go about their work, and we want to ensure that in the future, you know, the energy supply is secure, and one of the ways we can do that is by being prepared. So we need to look at that a lot more, and that's something that we'll definitely be doing with the likes of OREC and EGA and our port partners. How is it that we're actually going to manage that? Do we have, you know, what kind of automation do we actually employ? There's so much that we don't know at the moment, and innovation is moving so quickly. So, you know, we need to make sure that we're taking account of everything that's available. So a key thing for us going forward is there's currently a consultation with the government going on about what it is that we can do to make not only developers but big tier contractors, but everybody actually invest more in the UK, make supply chain plans more meaningful, and make the CFD a better tool for delivery of projects, because there's a real risk now that as in the last round of CFD, prices fell below the wholesale price of energy, that developers will be looking at having a merchant PPA rather than using the CFD regime. So they want to make the CFD more fit for purpose. So with the actual questions here, I think this is something that, you know, we feel that we should have a conversation, and we'd like you to feed back. So, you know, I've already had a read of these questions, and they are from the BEIS consultation. But I think, you know, if people want to actually come on into the call and give us their thoughts on what they think we could do, we'd be happy to have that. We might not have the answers, but, you know, this is an area where we encourage you to tell us what you think could be done. Esme, if there's anybody thinking about popping in, if they could let us know, get their camera up or whatever.
Yeah, everyone should be able to unmute themselves if they want to ask a question.
Super. Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll keep talking anyway. So in case you haven't actually seen the document, I've included a link in this presentation, and I would encourage you to go in there and read it and respond if possible, please. Don't think it's just for the big tier 1 contractors, and don't think it's just for the developers. It really should be for everybody to actually go in there and you know, as we find when we have these events, and we've been reading the responses to our Netigate survey already, and some of the questions in there, you know, really cut through to the core of what needs to happen to actually, you know, not only deliver our projects but take energy forward in the UK in terms of renewables. So I think, you know, you've got some brilliant ideas. You know, people like Nigel, I know, always comments. More of that kind of stuff, please, coming through and telling us, you know, what you think could be done. We do listen to them, and we certainly do, you know, put them forward in the various forums that we're involved in. So myself, I'm involved with the Offshore Wind Industry Council on supply chain, and a lot of the things that you know that we get from chatting to the supply chain go directly in there as ideas for improvement. And when I'm talking to DIT about you know, what it is that we can do, what's available in the region, you know, they're always interested, and that's why they always attend our events, just quietly sat in the corner, because they know that they're going to learn more from the supply chain that we have in the regions than you know, just by reading various reports. So no questions yet so far. So I think if we look at the actual questions, and sort of stimulating what it is we want to do. It's how do we make supply chains, better for everybody? And is that around penalising people, or is that incentivizing people? And I know what I think is the better actual answer, but it's not just developers. It really does come from the top down, in my opinion. And we need government to have more of an industrial investment in the facilities. Can we flick down to the next? Or no, actually, is it you up next, Catherine, with the next slide? And then we're on to the jobs and growth numbers.
Yeah, I just thought I'd put in this slide, which really comes from some work that EAGA and New Anglia LEP sponsored, which is around the cluster in East Anglia, and showing the kind of current round of activity that's going on, and some of the specialisms of the area and the opportunities, really. Our projects are up there along with those of other developers, and we very much see opportunities for using the amazing port facilities in East Anglia, during construction and beyond into O&M. And yeah, just picking up on some of the points that Rob referred to there in relation to long-term planning and being prepared for things. And it also kind of aligns with our general approach to sustainability, sustainable procurement. And, we think that difficult times lead sometimes to more collaboration and ultimately better decision making and better planning, because it gives you an opportunity to reset a bit and rethink things and take a slightly different perspective. So, we have talked at previous meetings about sustainable procurement, and that's still very much a part of the Vattenfall agenda. But I think, where it's appropriate to do things locally, it's often more sustainable to do things locally. And, it introduces a level of resilience that we can see the obviousness of now in the situation that we're in, I suppose.
Exactly.
So,
I'm seeing various questions coming up about some of the things we've mentioned, and I see one from John just at the bottom here about fit for offshore renewables. I'm not going to go into that today, John. Ralph is actually on the call, I think, and there's going to be a trial, I think, in the region for fit for offshore renewables. So, in the 10 minutes that we've got left, I don't think we'd do it justice talking about it, only to say that it's a really good opportunity to get businesses up to a standard where they're better able to support renewable industry. And also for somebody like Vattenfall, if somebody's fit for offshore renewable accredited, that will mean that they're pre-qualified for our tenders rather than having to go through the process every time. So that's all I'll say on that for now. Can we flip down to the next slide, please, Catherine? Because I think it's quite a meaningful one.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. We might now suddenly jump 3 slides. Let's see what happens.
Shall I turn my camera off to see if that helps at all? I think I might be upsetting it.
I'm reluctant to flick it again. Let's try.
Yeah, no, it will get there.
Here we go.
Okay, cool. So part of the work that we've actually been doing with the Offshore Wind Industry Council is looking at what 60% actually means in the UK in terms of, what does that mean in jobs? Is it actually sensible, practical, meaningful to say that we're going to get to 60% in the UK? I think it should definitely remain a target, and it's something we should strive for. But the scale, as we've said at our events before, is like nothing I've ever seen before. And honestly, I don't know how we actually get there. It needs a completely different mindset. It's not one more monopile factory or one more blade factory. It's a significant number of factories and people if we're going to achieve 60% by 2030. So I won't talk about that too much more, other than to say, you know, this is something that the developers can't do alone. It's something that you can't do alone. You know, it's an industry approach, and this is one of the things that we really need to do, is get together as an industry and make sure that this actually happens. Nothing more I can really say about that. The numbers speak for themselves. Next slide, please, Catherine, because we're getting very close to time. So the next slide that's going to be come up is we've been doing some jobs mapping, some work that we've been doing probably for the last 12 months, looking at the 4 stages of the project. So that would be development, construction, O&M, and then decommissioning, and what sort of jobs would be involved, whether they would be management jobs, whether they would be white collar roles or blue collar roles, and how long would they last for. And this is an ongoing piece of work. These are conservative numbers, and they don't include the associated supply chain feeding into something like the O&M numbers that we've got here. This will be available for everybody after the call anyway, so you can sit and have a look at that. But we're, you know, these, I mean, the 109 figure for the O&M is, again, a conservative figure. I think it's actually going to be higher than that, because we were sat on a call, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Catherine and myself, and saying, you know, these numbers are light everywhere, and we think that they definitely need to be higher. And also taking into account how CV19 is going to affect, you know, operations generally going forward. So this is some work that we very much hope that we can roll out later on in a lot more detail. But for now, just so you understand, we are doing significant amounts of work, and significant hours have gone into it. And obviously we have data back to 2008 in terms of how much we've spent, how many people we've employed, you know, what size companies they've been, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of data that we've been analysing over the last 18 months. So we've got really, really good figures, and we're actually starting to share some of that information with government as well. So they've got an additional level of granularity to see, from my point of view, where it is they need to support going forward, and where they can help us to bring the supply chain, you know, up to the next level in terms of being able to support. Okay, I think that's probably enough on that one, Catherine. The final 2 slides that we actually had today were just about O&M and what would actually be happening. Now, this is an area that's quite new to me, although I've been talking to the ports for quite a while, and I've also been working with OREC about O&M automation and how we can actually improve that and the benefits that it brings. I just want people to know that we're talking to both ports. We've got reserved area at Great Yarmouth already, and we're looking at what it is that we can do to have the optimal servicing of our wind farms. You know, there's so many benefits to, you know, to both locations. And as I said, I've been asked to actually take on the role of looking after the O&M preparations and procurement. What I would say for the people that are on the call that are really interested in this area, please try to be patient with me, because I need to launch all of the onshore civils and enabling tender and scope opportunities first over the next 4 weeks, and then I'll be starting on the O&M port opportunities. So I will get to you. You will get an opportunity to chat to me, and we're going to do a really open process. You know, the way I'm going about this is that, you know, we want to be really transparent in how we're doing this, what the opportunities are, you know, what the benefits are, and why we make the decisions that we make. So that's what we're doing. And the next slide is just one that was shown before by Hernan about how we might actually operate our concept out of the harbour. This isn't finalised yet because of some of the changes that we've had to make to our consent. We're rerunning all of our figures and data to ensure that we've got an absolutely optimised model for our O&M, so that when we do come to market, we're talking about you know, an operational plan that's actually meaningful and sensible, and hopefully that you'll have a good opportunity to feed into. And do we want to jump to questions now, or what do we want to do?
Yeah, I just have a sort of closing slide, and then I was going to do Q&A.
Cool. Okay.
Simon, you're on mute. I'm not sure if you're aware.
Hi everyone, it's Simon here again. Just to say, we'll take some questions now. Rather than open your mics up, if you could please put your questions via the chat area, and I'll put those questions then to our panel that we have here. So Chris Boswell is on saying, has decommissioning activity been taken into consideration when deciding on the concepts adopted for offshore scope? And can this study be shared with manufacturers and designers? Probably one for you, Rob.
I would need to chat to the engineering team on that. It's not something that I'm that close to because my role is more development and onshore civils. We do definitely look at commissioning over the lifetime, and more in terms of budgetary costs and also in terms of you know, the technologies that we're employing, as we did for Aberdeen. If you look at Aberdeen, where we've obviously got suction buckets to, you know, not only ease installation but also to ease decommissioning. It will be taken into account. We do have a sustainability team, but I just can't answer that. That's something to follow up with, definitely.
Another question from Jason Brighton with regard to tier ones. How much pressure does Vattenfall put on them to use UK resources in the supply chain? And I'll give you another one at the same time as that, which is similar, which was what do Vattenfall see as the priority actions to reach the 60% UK content? And that's from Nigel Hargreaves. So two there about UK content, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we make it a contractual obligation. That's the best way of doing it. When we go out to tender, it's actually it's Schedule 19 in our ITT and in our FIDIC contract, and we ask them to actually identify how much, what it is, whatever, and that will be evaluated not only at the bid return stage but also at the final contract closing stage as well. We're evaluated by government, obviously, at the supply chain plan, which will be before we bid for the CFD. We're also probably going to be evaluated at FID, and we're going to be evaluated a year after the project. So it's a continual evaluation, and you know, we're leaning on tenderers really heavily for tier ones. I think the fact that we got them all to Lowestoft and we got people an opportunity to sit around a table with them and engage with them directly is you know, at this stage of the game, is something that I haven't seen any other developers doing. Now, what I would say is I don't sit in on the meetings that any of the other big developers have, but did anybody get the opportunity with Equinor for, you know, for Dogger Bank? I'm not sure that they did. I don't know. Would somebody like to tell me if they have had that opportunity this early?
As I say, Rob, I think we're trying to use the chat function as opposed to opening up our microphones at the same time. I think that might cause some issues.
Yeah, we apply a lot of pressure anyway.
Really good. Glad to hear it. I think we're just about at the end of our session. There are some other questions in the chat area, and do still please feel free to add other questions in there. We'll put those questions to our panel. In the meantime, I'm just going to wrap things up, and just to say thank you very much indeed for all our speakers. So I don't know whether you can now see my
Final thing, Simon, can I just jump in? I wanted to answer Nigel's questions about priority actions for 60%. Very simply, as much turbine stuff as possible made in the UK. So that's blades and towers, and eventually nacelles. Foundations, yes, we would like to see them made in the UK, whether that's jackets or monopiles. If not, then secondary steel. We would like to see more installation in the UK. I would like to see more grid infrastructure in the UK, so that's equipment and parts of topsides. I would also like to see export cables in the UK, and we're talking to DIT and various manufacturers about that. And obviously O&M needs to increase probably by about 10% in the UK to help us achieve our targets. So 60% is really challenging. You've seen the amount of factories that are required to achieve that. So there you go. Those are the targets for not just Vattenfall, but for everybody.
Thanks for that, Rob. Just to reiterate that this has been recorded. The recording will be made available over the next few days to everyone that registered for the event. All the presentations will also be made available as well, so you'll have those. All the links in those are also embedded, so you'll be able to click on those links as well to take you through to various other websites as well. Do feel free to keep adding questions if you have other questions you want to start adding in there, and we'll ask our panel to answer those questions. But it is time to wrap up now. First of all, just a big thanks to our speakers, Catherine Jones, Rob Lilly, and our special guest, Rob Anderson, and congratulations on your appointment, Rob. Also to say that thank you for all of you who registered today. I think we had a steady sort of 100 online at any one time, with people coming in and out. Great to see. We had 130 registrations, I believe. If you do want to keep up to date with future eager events, do register for our weekly newsletter. That comes free of charge to you every week, giving you detailed information of other events we have going on. So this webinar today was free. We didn't charge for it, and we want to thank our speakers. If you'd like to demonstrate your thanks to our speakers, what I would ask you to do is support your local NHS. Our colleague, who's pictured here, Beth, is celebrating her 21st birthday. I mean, perhaps like me, she's got locked in hair. My hair hasn't been cut now for 8 weeks. I think it needs a good cut. Beth's going to celebrate her 21st by shaving her head to raise money for the NHS. And there's her Just Giving page there. So I'd really appreciate it, as would our speakers today, if you could log on to that Just Giving page and just give a few quid over towards the NHS and the wonderful work that they're doing at the moment. So for any other further inquiries or comments, there's my contact details, simon.gray@eager.com. And as I say, both Rob, Catherine and Rob Anderson's contact details will be there as well. Thank you all very much indeed for being with us from your homes and offices today. Really appreciate you joining us. Wasn't the easiest thing in the world to organise, but hopefully we got 100 of you on there at any one time. Thank you very much indeed for your input. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do let us know what you think, and do let us know about future events you'd like to see. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, there we are. That's good.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just PDFing the PowerPoint before you send it out, that would be good, because I think there's bits of scrappy notes